And we're live. I got check marks anyway. We got people showing up in here. I have to push the button over here on Instagram because it's 2025 and you still have to actually do things on your own to make Instagram work. What? What is that? Anyway, today, everyone, we're here with Marc Mawhinney, a longtime friend of mine. You've met him before if you've ever tuned into one of my Christmas Eve specials here on the channel. Marc has had a long career in business that has included some ups and some downs. And today we're going to be talking about dealing with adversity and dealing with haters in the world of business. And I think it's a bit of an apropos time to talk about that. So let's roll the intro reel, and then we'll get things going with Marc as soon as I get back.
I'm David C. Barnett, and you're tuned in to Small Business and Deal Making, the podcast, YouTube channel, and blog where I talk about buying, selling, financing, and managing small and medium-sized businesses while controlling risk. So if you're looking to take control of your future through buying a business one day, or if you already own a business and you're looking to grow or exit, you've come to the right place. I talk about interesting things, I talk to interesting people, and I answer your questions every week right here. So be sure to hit like and be sure to hit subscribe, and let's get to it. Are you thinking of growing your business or beginning a journey into entrepreneurship? Take a shortcut to success by buying an existing and profitable business the right way. Visit businessbuyeradvantage.com and learn more about my online training, group coaching, and consulting services designed to help you win.
All right, welcome back, Marc. Kevin's in the house. He says, "Good afternoon, Kevin. From Lakeland, Florida." Hey, Kevin, how are you today? Good to see you. Let's give you an opportunity to introduce yourself. Today, you are the host of the Natural Born Coaches podcast, and you work with people in the coaching industry all over the world. You've been on the air now 10 years?
November of 2014. So it'll be 11 years very soon. Yeah.
Well, 11 years you've been on the air with the podcast. And before that, I mean, you and I, do you want to know the time that we first met? Do you remember?
Yes. I believe you're selling Yellow Pages ads, along with stone tablets where you would engrave ads, like, and then you had the dinosaurs hollowed.
It was yellow tablets.
Yeah. So I was in real estate, and I believe you stopped into my office on Hilliard Place, and that's where it was. And that probably would have been 06-ish, maybe.
It would have been way back then. Yeah. Yeah. And then since that time, you and I crossed paths a few times, and then we ended up being friends when you moved here to Moncton. And our children are approximately the same age, and we used to do that Saturday afternoon trips to the playground and stuff together. But I think what I'd like to do is bring you back to that time when we first met, because you were in the real estate business and you had a pretty rapid growth. You want to tell everyone about that part of your history and where you were at in that point in your career?
Sure. First, I'll say it's weird talking to you on here when it's not Christmas Eve. I had to look. I'm like, is it December 24th today? I don't recall hearing Mariah Carey's All I Want for Christmas, although it probably is coming out soon. I think she has to wait till September before she starts unthawing there. But yeah, I mean, in a nutshell, I got started in real estate back when I was 21 years old, right after graduating university, jumped into it. And I say I was a young-looking 21. There wasn't any gray hair. I looked about 15 or 16. So when I found an old business card recently from 2000 when I started in real estate, and I'm like, who the heck would have hired this kid? It's like, get this kid a sandwich. So anyways, yeah, I started in real estate. Worked my butt off for the first 6 months, I probably made third world wages. Like anyone who's in real estate knows, it takes a while to prime the pump. But then things started to really get rolling when I would take those commissions coming in, invest them back into marketing. So again, this is another thing that's going to date us. I was throwing a lot of money into radio ads, print with the real estate guide, and just all these old school strategies. Whereas nowadays, I don't know if I'd want to be selling real estate in 2025. I'd have to twerk against a for sale sign or something, like these influencer real estate agents. But yeah, and I started bringing on team members.
You'd have to answer DMs until midnight every night.
Yeah, well, I was answering phone calls till midnight, but not so much. Text wasn't a thing back, like I said, back then. But yeah, so things really got rolling. I took advantage of a government funding program, a workforce expansion grant, which basically subsidized, I want to say it was I was able to hire someone again. This was before all the crazy inflation, like $10 an hour, and I think I only had to pay $2 an hour, and the government covered $8. And
I remember those days, and I've used that program in some of
Yeah.
my past businesses too. And so just so everyone knows, this was a program where if you created a new job in your business, you couldn't use this to replace someone, but if you created a
Right.
new job, so a net new position, the government would kick in part of that person's wages for 12 weeks or something. It was basically just to help you
Get
get
their foot
started
in
with a
the
new
door.
person.
Yeah. So
And
my
their goal was to create more taxpayers.
Yeah. My first hire ended up wanting to get her real estate license, which was great because anyone who's in real estate knows that working with buyers wasn't my thing. It can take a lot of time. Some people enjoy it. They always say you have to list to last. You want to get the listings. But anyway, she got her license so she could help with buyers, and I added another buyer's agent, and then it really snowballed. And but within under 10 years, I was up to about 100. I opened up my own brokerage, had about 100 agents and employees. I had several different sister companies under one umbrella, one for property management, for mortgages, one for home staging, and then one for lawn care. And everything was going great until it wasn't going great. And then it collapsed back in 2009, August of 2009. I can't believe it's been 16 years with that. But I'm sure we'll get into this today. It was a rough time because, Dave, because you're local, the city that I was in is if a cat's stuck in a tree, it's front page news on for the local newspaper and stuff like that. And so it was a rough closure. Not that there's a lot of clean ones. There are some, but yeah, it was an interesting time.
Yeah, so your business basically came to a halt. Like there were problems in the business, and you
Yeah.
stopped operating, and people buying and selling homes were kind of stuck in the middle of these processes. And of course, everybody knows real estate agents in their community, and you were one of the biggest offices in the city, and so it was a very, very public thing for you. Like
Yeah.
you couldn't hide from this anywhere.
It wasn't a small closure. So I called our local real estate board when this all happened, because I should step back a little bit. I was a typical entrepreneur that you are told to be positive. The kitten hanging on the clothesline poster, everyone's probably seen hang in there. That was me. Like, oh, we could turn this around or whatever, because I'd never experienced any stumbles in a decade of building this business. So I'm like, we'll ride it out or whatever until you can't. And so when I contacted the real estate association, I'm like, okay, what do we do now? And they're like, they didn't want to touch it. We don't know. And I'm like, oh, you've never experienced this. And they're like, well, not with this many agents and this many listings, because we had a lot of listings around the city. Where I screwed up is with the agent's knowledge, but I had advanced commissions that were set to close to try to keep things open. And then, of course, everything closed. We had all the deals set to close, but no way to get paid, because lawyers were calling me like, hey, how do I pay out 123 Main Street's closing tomorrow? And I'm like, I can't accept the payment to pay people out. And the government did not, well, the real estate association didn't want to touch it. It was radioactive. They said, no, they washed their hands of it. Luckily, now this, I say it was a process. I think it took 6 months or so, but luckily the provincial government, one of their departments, like labor, post-secondary education or something, jumped in, and they were able to collect the owing commissions and pay to the agents. But in the meantime, I'd heard all sorts of things, like people saying, oh, I ran off to some hot sunny island down the Caribbean with all this money, which I wish that would have been nice. I say the mistake I made, but I think I'm kind of glad I did this. I kept my phone number and I kept my phone on, and I answered calls to try, because I felt bad. It's a shitty situation when you're going through this, and I don't blame the agents or anything like that. But by keeping my phone on and all that other stuff, I probably put a lot of strain and stress on me as well. Whereas some people would be like, no, I'm going to change phone numbers and not talk to anyone going through this. Yeah. So that was in a nutshell. Our local newspaper, it was really strange. A few years after it, I was invited to speak at an event. And it was Brad LeBlanc, who who hosts events like that, hosted. And they're sitting in the front row, the reporter, and I'm like, why are you here? If I, get a parking ticket, are you going to run a front page story? It was very strange. And I'm not a huge fan of the media. I think I coined the term fake news before Trump did. I should probably ask for royalties, because the amount of wrong reporting and kind of shady stuff on the media end of it is, but the old saying, buying ink by the barrel and all that other stuff. What do you do? So, yeah.
So you've had plenty of time to reflect on that part of your life, right? Since this has all happened, and there was one thing that you said there that I wanted to go back to, is that for a 10-year period, every year you had growth. You had
it was
more
like hockey
agents,
stick growth,
more sales, more earnings, et cetera, et cetera. So you had only really known after your initial start in real estate, where you expect to work hard in the beginning of any new business. You just saw this up growth, and then you hit problems. And so when you started to hit those problems, what sorts of things were you thinking? And after reflection, how maybe should you have better managed that point?
So that's a good question. I could probably talk for quite a while on that. I'll say that the issue that came from having those stumbles and that hockey stick growth is you start to buy your own press, and you think you can do no wrong. That Midas touch, everything you touch turns to gold. And
hubris, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, overconfidence.
Yeah.
I got started, and when all this was going on, I was about 29 years old. I was 30. I just turned 31 when everything happened. So the whole term, the dirty 30s. I know where it comes from. From the 30s.
Dirty 30s. Okay.
Yeah. So there's an overconfidence definitely there, where you think you could do no wrong. You think you could get through anything. Part of what had happened in early 2009, we had in the first 2 months of the new business starting, awful months for the whole market. So we were doing really well for market share, like right on par with what we usually did. But the actual number of sales in the local real estate board were way down. And I'm like, what the hell is going on here? I suspect maybe part of it is, of course, the U.S. was going through their issues in 2008. What's that saying? When the U.S. sneezes, we catch a cold later, like a little bit later.
Right, and most of the viewers here will be are on the U.S. side, so they'll remember that.
And I've run into so many people online that were in real estate, because I deal with mostly Americans like you. My clientele is almost all Americans. There's a few overseas and things, and I've heard so many stories from people around 2008 in the States that were either in real estate, whether it be selling, investing, whatever, and they ran into it as well. So it might sound cliche, you hear it a lot, but growing too big too fast, that was definitely the case. I had moved into an enormous new office in St. John in the south, uptown, South End. And it was, now this may not sound like as much now given inflation and stuff, but it was about 8,500 a month. Enormous square footage, because we had 100 employees in there. The problem with real estate is, I think about 60 were real estate agents. Real estate agents, you're not going to have 60 in the office at any time. You're going to have them, they're out running the roads or doing showings or at home or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, we didn't need that much space for it. Monday morning quarterback I'm playing, I would probably go with something that was about a third the size and had fewer desks. Not everyone needs their own desks and offices and cubicles and everything.
So what you're basically describing is that because you were growing so quickly year over year, and because you were seeing success all the time, you began to believe that it was going to continue on in the same way, and that gave you the confidence to undertake bigger overhead cost expansions, like this big new office space.
Yeah, because
once you sign that lease, you lock in that expense, and then you get the bump in early 2009 when the real estate market started to shutter here a little bit, knock on from what was happening in the U.S. Then all of a sudden those overheads start to eat you.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, banks throwing money at you. Didn't have any issue with that, or whatever. But again, playing Monday morning quarterback's much easier. I've thought about it before where I'm like, well, should I have stayed? because pre-2009, 2008, I had the office that you and I first met in, and I had a smaller team of probably, I don't know, 10 real estate agents. And then I had the property management and stuff like that, but it was probably, a third the size of what we grew to. It's a challenging business because when I work the numbers, I'm like, I really don't think, or I certainly wouldn't have been happy. I would have been working too much in that case. So what's a magic number? Like maybe it would have been me as the lead agent with like 4 or 5 really good selling agents. The thing that always worried me is I didn't want a case, like I treated my agents really well in terms of paying their MLS dues. We were giving them leads. We were doing a lot of contests, sales contests. I remember, one summer we did a couple boat cruises, but we're always doing different parties and, things like that because you want to motivate them and treat them well. And I probably treated too well in that case. But my worry was if you have just a couple agents working under you and they're going gangbusters because they're getting all these leads, because we're getting all these calls from the number of listings we have out there, it's very easy for them to then leave and go to a different company. And the problem with real estate is that there's not that loyalty. An insurance company, someone retires, they could sell their book of business. And here we go. Here's the book. Here's much I want. Someone's not going to leave with that. Real estate, the consumer, whether it be the buyer or the seller, identifies with. If Dave's a real estate agent, they've looked at 50 houses with you. They've had these.
The relationships are personal. The goodwill of your business was in the agents.
Yeah, so they're viewing it more. There's a tighter tie with the agents than with Mark, who they've never met before. And the same thing goes with Remax, Century 21, all the other companies too. So there's really not enough control of the clientele or the book of business from the real estate model, to be honest, in my opinion.
And do you think that, now you're on the outside of the real estate agent industry, what you see from the street view that we all have, how do you see that changing? Like, do you think that the agencies or the offices are losing even more of their economic power?
Yeah, the splits going to the companies are less. The control over the agents are just moving around. Like the companies have very little control. So to illustrate how much it's changed, when I was with my original company before I went out on my own, it would have been probably around 2003-ish, 2004, when I was really, really rolling, getting all these new listings. I had to fight with my company to get my team's phone number as a prominent number on the signs. It was a battle for a year. Because before that, it was always, and I'm not going to say which company, but I know the company's number because I was so annoyed at this. They had their number across in big font on all the signs, and there's a little rider on the top that got screwed in, and half the time it blew away with our lovely Canadian winters and everything else that said the Marc Mawhinney team with a very, very small number. And I said to my broker, I'm like, why am I paying so much money for marketing every month and stuff to drive people to call the office and get handed to your duty agent when it should be going to me? And that was a fight. And I finally got it through. Nowadays, it would be inconceivable for the company to have a big ass number on the sign and the agents to have a little rider. It doesn't work that way. And it's very much a free agent. What I see, I don't, I still pay attention a little bit, but I'm not in the real estate bubble that everyone in real estate's in. So I'm seeing that. And I mentioned earlier, I made a joke. What I don't like is I do see it on Instagram and stuff, the reels where agents are twerking, dry humping signs. They're doing these silly dances and trends and, looking like strippers and things. You get the once a bottle girl ages out, in Los Angeles or Vegas. Oh, time to get my real estate license. I'm 30, or whatever.
Stereotypes aside, let's talk about that period of time there at the end, because when you had that problem in early 2009, sales went down because the number of closings was going down. You had this increased overhead. At what point did you realize that you were in some kind of trouble? Like, when did you realize, hey, my experience of nonstop growth and success, regardless, like it's there's a problem I need to address? How long did it take before you had to cognitively accept that and try to start dealing with it?
I don't think I accepted it until the morning of Tuesday, August 12th, 2009. That was literally the last day. That summer was stressful. I remember that. And, certainly wasn't sleeping much and everything else. But right up until the end, I was thinking, like, how can I save this? Because you don't want to see a business close where so many hours have gone in. You've got so many people who are, depending on you, employees and so on. We had so many agents listings around the city, everything else. Again, this is probably the curse of the entrepreneur, but I didn't fully accept it until I had to accept it, where there was no other options. I make a joke. I'm not completely serious about this, but at one point I'm like, I wonder how you contact the mob to get like a whole bunch of money. They'd be willing to throw money into this. Probably a good thing that didn't happen, because that wouldn't have been good for me or my family. That's literally how like messed up I was with it, and so desperate to save it.
Well, so did you ever at any time ask yourself how you might close it if you decided to pull the plug?
The issue I had was my whole identity was wrapped up in real estate, because that's all
Yeah.
I'd done in my adult life. So there wasn't a Mark over here and then Mark, the real estate guy, over here. It was all together, right? And so it was almost inconceivable to not be doing real estate, because what the heck? I thought about it when it closed. What the heck do I do? This is all I've ever done is real estate. So no, I can't say that I ever thought of, hey, let's come up with an orderly process, as opposed to, let's say it's a 60, 65-year-old couple, like they have a mom and pop shop, and they're like, we're getting kind of tired of this. We want to relax and travel in our golden years. And then they can wind it down and come up with a good plan to do that. Mine wasn't. Mine was going 100 miles an hour, crashing into that brick wall. And then unfortunately, there's collateral damage. It's not just myself who's hurt from that.
So over the course of my career, I've met many entrepreneurs who were running a business that was in some kind of trouble, and the numbers weren't performing anymore. They were losing money. They were at the point where they had to put in more of their own personal resources. Like instead of money flowing out into their pocket, they were feeding their business to try to keep the doors open. And I would ask them, like, at what point are you going to stop doing that? Like, when are you going to realize, or what number has to be achieved as far as losses or whatever for you to say, you know what, this isn't working anymore. This thing has failed. I have to get out of it. I have to close it. And it's amazing to me how many of them will just, they've completely avoided any of that thought. And several of them have actually asked me, like, well, how on earth does one stop?
Yeah.
Like because you get in this day-to-day rhythm of, this is what I do, this is what we do, this is what we do. And then just imagining how you would unwind that, and, potentially any kind of business where you're making a promise to deliver something in the future, like you take a listing on a house, you're promising to sell the house, maybe there is a contract in place. Like, just thinking, like, how would I have to call everyone I do business with and let them know I'm closing? Like, it's very hard kind of thing to contemplate. And I think for most people, they get tied up with their identity just in the way you've expressed. They don't know how they can see themselves as being separate from the thing they're doing.
They feel like losers, that they're giving up. It's almost like a gambling mentality. When you're pot committed, playing, anyone who's played poker knows this, and you're playing, let's say, a hand, and you've put a lot of chips into the middle, you know that your hand's probably not going to win. Things didn't work out with the cards on the table, but you're like, well, gee, I've already put this much in, I got to keep going. Or if someone goes on a cold streak, they lose. You hear stories of people tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars at the casino, and then they end up just drawing from their equity in their house or whatever. And it's easy for someone on the outside to look and say, oh my God, why are you being an idiot? You should have stepped away from the table a long time ago. But when you're in the fog of war, you're in the middle of it, it's not as easy. Especially not like at the time, again, I was in my 20s or had just hit 30. I'm not saying that's a kid, but it's also not 60 when you've seen more stuff or whatever.
There hasn't been the same track record to develop wisdom and experience.
Yeah, and now I can step back, and I don't want to say it's a good. There was a time when I thought there'd never be a day that would go by that I wouldn't think of my real estate experience and failure. And I'm like, no way. It's the world's over. I'm going to think about this till the day I die. This is awful. And now it's more like a scar that's kind of healed over. And, it doesn't have that same emotional sting. And when you look back at it too, although I wish it had ended differently, I would have been miserable in real estate. Like I said, I just turned 47. I had said to my wife at the time, and I, my wife, we got married in Vegas back in 2006, and the team was instructed, do not call me unless the world's ending. Basically, I'm not going to be working down here. We're combining our wedding and our honeymoon. Don't contact me unless it's something that's the end of the world. We landed at McCarran Airport. I think it's Harry Reid now. We were on the strip for less than an hour, and my phone rings with one of my assistant's numbers. And I'm like, oh God. So I answer it, and she's like, I'm so sorry to bother you, Mark. Now, this was February. You know what February is like in Canada, Dave, but anyone who's not in Canada, February isn't probably the month you're going to want to come up and visit. So she said,
unless you're a skier,
if you're a skier, you're into ice fishing, you're into snowmobiling, maybe, but it can be cold. And she basically, one of our vacant listings had a oil furnace, and usually the light switch for an oil furnace is painted red so that people don't think, the switch, so they don't think it's a light switch. This one wasn't. So somebody, I don't know who, whichever agent was showing the house, turned the furnace switch off in February. The pipes froze, busted, and just totally trashed the house. Hardwood floors, messed, totally gone. Everything else. To make it even worse, it was one of our employees with our property management company. It was her house. We were listing it for her. And I said to my wife, I'm like, if I'm doing this at like 60, 65, shoot me. I said, I do not want to be doing this. I also remember seeing an agent in our local marketplace. She was about 130 years old. Now, maybe not 130, but she must have been 85. And one Sunday, I was at a really busy intersection in the city, and I saw her, going out to put her sign in the middle of the intersection. And again, she had to be over 80 years old. And I just thought, geez, that's really sad to be doing that. And I'm not judging her. Maybe she enjoyed it, but I didn't want to be stuck being a real estate agent. And maybe it sounds snotty. It's just the way I feel. And some people are fulfilled by it, but my experience is real estate agents, there's a lot of them aren't happy. There's a lot of issues.
It's a demanding role that doesn't have defined hours.
No, it doesn't.
It's not a 9 to 5. Henry has put a comment in here that I think is really good.
Hey, Henry.
Henry says, sunken cost and personal identity. Perhaps the hardest decision a business has to make is to shut down or completely pivot. Appreciate the perspectives. I do too. Thank you, Henry, for your comment.
Thanks, Henry.
Let's talk about this one thing that Henry has pointed out here. Sunk cost fallacy, I believe, is what it's called. I run into this with people who are buying businesses, where they'll make an offer on a business, they'll have a negotiation, they'll get into their due diligence, they'll start examining things, and then maybe they start to invest money with their team. So they rack up some hours with the lawyer, they rack up some hours with an accountant or a quality of earnings team or whatever, and then things are discovered which cause them to maybe have doubts about the deal, and then they want to renegotiate with the seller, they want to bring the price down, or they maybe aren't sure if they should move forward at all. But now by this point they've invested $20,000, and so they feel an obligation to want to go and do the deal. Otherwise they've wasted that money. And the thing that I always have to point out to people is that the money's been spent. Just because you may have indeed spent $20,000 that is not going to lead you towards the acquisition of a business. It just saved you from spending another $1 million on something that isn't going to work out, right? So but that money in kind of thing really sucks people along. They feel like they have to be committed to it. And the same thing with time. I know that when I had my business brokerage office open, similarly, I felt like I identified as a business broker. And there was a fellow that came in the office one day because he was helping somebody else with a business acquisition. And this guy, he owned a bunch of franchised pizzerias, and the brand that he was with brought out a submarine sandwich brand meant to compete with Subway. And so they gave all their pizzeria guys a special deal to open one of these sub locations. And he did. And it didn't work out well at all. So it didn't make any money. And then he closed it. As soon as his lease came up, he closed it. And I asked him, I said, how did it make you feel when you closed that sub shop? And he said, it made me feel terrific. It was terrible. It was losing my money. It wasn't an asset. It was awful. I wanted to get rid of it as soon as I could.
Yeah.
And that's what really made me pause and think about where I was in business brokerage, because I was on this treadmill of, doing a deal, getting like a commission of $50, $60, $80,000, and then going months and months and months without ever really being able to
I
know when the
remember you
next deal was
telling me
closing.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I would go up into the black, and then I'd be down into the hole. I would owe on my credit card, line of credit, et cetera. And I would close another deal just to get back to black. And it was like, I can't
You're
keep
kicking
doing
the
this.
can down the road. And that sub shop guy reminds me of that old saying, what's two best days in a boat owner's life? The day he buys a boat, the day he sells it, which sounds bad. But I was going to mention a couple things. I'm the challenge for entrepreneurs is we're so resilient and motivated that we think we could climb out of any hole whatsoever. But sometimes some holes are meant to, maybe the metaphor doesn't work, to die in or for rebirth. One of my friends went through a breakup recently where he, quote, wasted 2 years on this girl who just, she wasn't the right one for sure. And she played a lot of games and she's kind of crazy and stuff. And he's still busted up about it. And I was talking to him recently about it. And he's like, geez, I wasted 2 years and I wish it could have worked out. And I said, I would flip it around. You could have wasted 10 or 20 years. You could have, They were looking at houses. I said, you could have bought a house together. You could have got married. You could have been dealing with all this BS for years. You dodged a bullet. So sometimes you have to just change it's a whole glass half full, half empty type thing. I think it applies in business, definitely.
And I think one of the things that people can best be served by is to realize that they are a person apart from whatever the business is that they've built. And a business is, here's the definition I love to use. A business is an asset that provides for you and your family by serving the needs of others in a profitable, executable, repeatable way. And if for some reason you can't execute properly, or there's not enough customers that really want that thing, so that whatever it is, either you can't execute or there's just not enough customers. If there's not a positive cash flow coming out of that, there's something wrong with it. It means that it's not really a business. What it is it's a liability of some kind. I often call them hobbies when they're not able to provide even, what the fair market value of the person's time would be if they went and worked someplace else.
Yeah, I also think that entrepreneurs don't realize how many failures that other now successful entrepreneurs have gone through in their past. So, for example, shortly after the business closed in 2009, I don't mind saying this. I've told the story many times. Rivers Corbett, who's gone through his ups and downs. I had a guy reach out to me, Rivers, who I'd never heard of before. He was in Fredericton, so about an hour away from me. And he said, hi, Mark, you don't know me. I saw your stories in the media or in the paper or whatever. He said, I'd love to meet up with you and have a coffee. And at this time, I was not in the mood I wasn't a social butterfly. I was probably, that was the last thing I wanted to do, drive 2-hour round trip to go have coffee with a stranger. But something made me do it. I said, I'll do it to get out of town. Had a great chat with Rivers. We're still friends today, but he had said to me during there, he was telling me stories of local entrepreneurs, successful ones, and how many, bankruptcies and failures and everything else that they went through. And he told me about his story. And I really appreciated that, because I find that entrepreneurs who fail, it's very easy for someone. It's like the Teddy Roosevelt man in the arena quote, that it's easy for people out in the arena to judge a warrior that's battling. But if you're not willing to step out into the battlefield, like, piss off, don't criticize. And that's why I feel like, especially in our part of the world, I think this is everywhere, that you've got people who are stuck in jobs that they hate. They've never taken a chance. And then they're attacking entrepreneurs who took a chance, and it just didn't work out. So even to this day, I have a lot of empathy for entrepreneurs who fail. And I also have, when I read the stories, whether it be online or if it's a Reddit, subreddits attacking the person, whatever, I kind of go in with skepticism because, like, I don't think this is the full story. No one opens a business with the thinking, yeah, I'm going to close this and a bunch of people are going to be hurt. It's the entrepreneur, the business owner that usually doesn't have anything to fall back on. They're the ones who've been shouldering that burden for months or years, and then it all collapses. But people love to jump on the business owner because it's that whole David and Goliath. They empathize with the employees. Oh, the poor employees and that evil boss. It's kind of like movies. If you ever look at Hollywood, the villain is usually the rich capitalist that's going into small town to buy out the baseball field to put a toxic dump, and then he's kicking out the little league team or whatever. Or like Spider-Man with Norman Osborn, Green Goblin. He's a rich, greedy capitalist or whatever.
It's like, true. It permeates culture and media for sure.
Well, especially now, yeah.
Victor from Nottingham has given us a like. If you're enjoying the conversation, please do the same. Leave a comment. Any interaction with the video helps the algorithm know that it's good quality content. What you just said about other entrepreneurs having trouble, going bankrupt, all that kind of stuff. It reminds me that back when I had my business brokerage, we had a standard intake form for business owners when they wanted to come to us to sell their business. And we would ask them some basic details about the business. How long have you had it? Did you buy it or start it, et cetera? One of the questions that was in that was, have you ever declared personal or business bankruptcy? And a third of the people checked yes. And I always, when I saw that checked yes, I would ask them to tell me the story. And it was typically the same story all the time. It was, I got started when I was rather young. I didn't have a lot of experience. I didn't surround myself with the right kind of mentors, et cetera. I got into business. I got into a poor business model, or I got into a business that, I didn't really understand or what have you. And they fought and struggled for a while and then eventually ended up closing. And these were all people that had built successful, profitable businesses later. And a lot of them would straight out tell you that the reason they were successful was because of everything they learned having gone through that experience.
Yeah, it's very difficult to, on your first try, hit a home run and be a total success. It does happen, but it's rare. There's a quote I read earlier today. It's funny we're doing this today. I wrote it down in my journal, and I don't know who said it, so my apologies. It wasn't me, but it said the key to success is knowing how to struggle well. And I thought that's entrepreneurship in a nutshell. You got to struggle well in this game.
Yeah. So, I had some questions here, but we kind of got into the meat of the conversation. After having gone through what you did, are there any sort of words of wisdom or warnings or advice that you want to give to people that are operating a business today to help them maybe notice things more quickly, so they can take more action? I'm
biased because I've been in the coaching world since 2014, but I'd say get a coach. Back around 2006 or so a few years before the closure, I was at that same office that Yellow Page Dave stopped into. At the front desk, they said, "Hey, Mark, someone's here to see you." So I went out, and it was a guy, I can't even remember his name, but he was a business coach, and he had seen my signs all over town and what I was doing. And we talked for a few minutes. I took him into the conference room, and he's like, I really think I could help you. Here's what I do. And me being young and dumb, in my mind, I'm thinking, like, can't you see what I built here? Like, do I look like I need any help? Like full of piss and vinegar. And I was polite, but I kind of sent him on his way, and I wasn't going to work with him. Once a business closed, I thought back to that, and I was like, oh, gee, maybe I should have worked with him. Now, maybe it would have gone the same direction, but I'm guessing it would have been a less messy business closure with it, because when you're in your own business, you can't see the forest for the trees. It's very difficult to see what's going on. But if there's a second set of eyes that's there, that's looking from the outside and is willing to give you the tough advice or ask the tough questions, that's a better way to go. So I'd say don't be a lone wolf, which I made a mistake of before, where I'm like, no, I'm going to handle this myself. And it just
was there anyone in your circle around you that you were looking to for advice or guidance or at all?
So I kept my wife out of the issue because I didn't want to stress her out. Anyone who's married and if they're going through business stuff, you don't want to be, like, hey, honey, I'm home. Oh, by the way, and then you dump all this stuff on them. So I was probably like I've said the whole time here, I was very much the optimist, the hang in there. Everything's fine. Yeah, dealing with some stuff here, but, I'll get through it. My brother Matt, as you know very well, I have a twin brother Matt, and he still is today a great sounding board. If I ever need, I'm like, hey, look, what do you think of this? Am I seeing this right or whatever? And he's given some great advice and ideas. He was sounding the alarm earlier than I was because he was running our property management company, and he was the one that I joke around with Matt. I call him he says it too, call him the turtle. So he's very conservative when it comes to growth and all that. And I'm very much like, go, more the dreamer. So I said, it's kind of like if there's a hot air balloon, I'd be the one that's like, oh, we don't need any weights on this hot air balloon. We'll be fine. Don't worry. He's like, no, maybe we should have some weight to keep us somewhat close to Earth so we don't go flying out into Earth's orbit or whatever. So he had picked up on it earlier than me with it, and stupid me, didn't listen to him. And you're being negative, and don't be a Debbie Downer. Again, life is so easy when you look backwards. Like, I could nail everything if I'm playing Monday morning quarterback, but when you're in the thick of things, it's difficult.
It's one of the things that I've had to say to many people who were kind of on this journey. Either they were trying to buy a business or they were building a business or what have you. Is I'll ask them about their circle of friends. And I know that there's value in having a great business coach. I've tried to hire them in the past. I've had a hard time finding a good one that would work well with me. But one of the places I've always had great success is with like peer groups, like getting a mastermind group or just developing strong relationships with other business people that you can like bounce ideas off of. And you and I do this from time to time too. And I've had to say to a lot of these people, like you need to get some friends who are also business owners who are going to understand what you're talking about. Because you have a trouble with an employee, for example, you want to be able to maybe bounce some ideas off of another business owner versus your high school buddy that works at the post office.
Yeah,
they're not going to understand what you're dealing with or your point of view, or worse, they could default to empathizing with the employee more so than you, because that's their role in their day-to-day, right? And so having a circle of friends who are business owners as well, especially in other industries, I often say, because you can then sort of cross-pollinate different ideas that work in other different spaces and come up with new ways of doing things. I know people are starting to do more of this kind of thing just with like AI tools and stuff, but some of the stuff that my AIs tell me, I take with a bit of salt. You got to have real friendships.
Yeah, and I think it's difficult for men versus women. Like, we're conditioned to show no weakness, no vulnerability. Someone asks you how are things going, even if the world's ending, it's like, yeah, I'm fine. That's great. Women are better at building a network of support with other females. So in this case, female entrepreneurs, and I feel like they're more open to sharing. The other piece of advice I'd give, in addition to what I just mentioned, is there's no shame in trying something, and if it doesn't work out, it's not the end of the world. There's the old proverb, fall 7 times, stand up 8, which I joked, I said should be on my tombstone when I do kick the bucket. But if you look at Abraham Lincoln's life and everything, oh my God.
They're doing QR codes now. You can make a video of yourself saying it.
Oh, you can. There we go. Abraham Lincoln, when you look at his timeline, it's like every year there's a big failure or death of his loved one, and business closure, lost an election. This guy, you would have been the last guy you'd think, oh yeah, he's going to be president of the United States, win the Civil War, free the slaves, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Love him or hate him, Donald Trump, I'm just reading his 2007 book now, is Never Give Up. And that guy, I think he's declared bankruptcy 6 times. He's in the early 90s, was $1 billion in debt. Another guy that you would never think, yeah, he's not going to be president. That was laughable. And, look at where we're at today with it. So I would much rather be the person who tries to do something big and falls short, and then you try again or whatever, as opposed to someone that's sitting in the peanut gallery who's never done anything and is just sniping at it. And that's a challenge with the internet. You know, back in 2009, it was starting to creep in. Social media really wasn't a big thing. Where I got flack was with, drove me nuts. Our local newspaper for the city had their articles, and then the comments were open. They would not moderate them. Nobody was watching them. So someone could go on there and say, Marc Mawhinney killed my grandmother, and he abducted 100 kids and whatever. I don't know. They could literally say anything. And my wife at the time, it drive me nuts. I get home and she'd been on there all day reading these things. And I'm just like, from Surfer Monkey 2001. I'm like, why do you give
anonymous accounts were saying?
Yeah, anonymous. And I have no idea who's doing it. I know not everyone, but I know some people, but strangers. But they're just saying vile things, and I'm like, come on, it's so easy to attack. Or people who, they don't know you, they don't know the situation. And I had to learn just to not even look at that. So, for example, now in 2025, there's someone. She's not a coach. She's in the personal development space, and she's a really big name. And I know we've chatted a few times. I don't know her really well. There's several subreddits that are dedicated to trashing her. Now, from what I know her, and I know people who've worked with her, she is a sweetheart. She cares so much about people. No one's perfect, but she's really good. She's not, one of these scam artists online or whatever. And I'm thinking, if she's getting attacked in several subreddits over the silliest stuff, she changed her hair color, they're like vultures or stuff like that. I'm like, oh my God. So you almost have to desensitize yourself. And I mean, one way you could look at it, the alter ego effect. Have we talked about that book before, you and I, Todd Herman, or no?
I can't remember.
Yeah, Todd Herman was on my show. I highly recommend this book. And the thesis of the book is basically you adopt an alter ego. So when you go into your field of play, whether it be business or if you're an actor or if you're whatever, you play the role of that alter ego. So you're able to build a bit of a shield where you're not being influenced by every attack that's coming at you. So some really big names like Beyonce, she had Sasha Fierce, I think hers was called. There's been athletes. I know one in particular.
This is the way people psych themselves up to
they adopt it. It's like putting a mask or a different hat on. So if you're a football player, let's say you're getting started, you're a young football player, and you want to be like Bo Jackson. There's a story, I can't remember which player, maybe it was Bo Jackson was when he went out in the field, he had a moniker for himself. He wasn't himself. I think he was Jason off the Friday the 13th movies. He was stalking people on the football field. And there's a whole thing where you choose a totem that ties into your whole alter ego. So if you're looking, let's say, to be like your favorite football player, you might take their trading card and put in your shoulder pad. And then whenever it's put in there and you're out in the field, you're acting like them. And you almost have to do that for business too, because if not, if you're too sensitive, you're going to just drive yourself crazy with it. Not everyone's going to like you. Do you know Penn and Teller, the magicians? They had a show called Bullshit that was on years ago. And they did an episode where they basically attacked Mother Teresa, the Dalai Lama, and I can't remember what other saintly type figure, and they basically debunked all the it was Gandhi was the other one, the third one, and they basically debunked all the myth of these and say they weren't good people because, and they were attacking all that. And I thought, oh my God, if Mother Teresa and Gandhi and stuff Dalai Lama are having trouble, like good luck with anyone else. That's if you're living any number of years, you're going to do some stuff, you're going to get some battle scars, you're not going to be perfect, and that's something you have to keep in mind.
Yeah, totally. As my advice to people, if they're in business and they want to have an early warning about something that may not be right in their business, is to make sure that you have a system where your financials are up to date at least every month. Old school business people, their bookkeeping staff would get their bank account statements reconciled at the end of the month, and then these days, with online access to all this kind of information, you should be able to know by the 4th or 5th day of a month exactly what happened in your business the prior month, and compare year over year and year to date, trailing 12-month, all that kind of stuff. Depending on the industry you're in, is going to determine what kind of view is going to be the most applicable to you. If you want to look at quarters or 6-month periods or month or even weeks, maybe in the restaurant business, and then have some kind of plan of what you hope to do for the year. Because if you've got a budget for the year and you're keeping track of your performance every month, then you can very easily know if you're on track or not.
Yeah.
And, 1 month when things slip, it catches your attention immediately. Now you're aware of a potential problem, not months into it, but right away. And then if by the next month it's not recovering and it's getting worse, guess what? You now know that you need to make some kind of change.
Yeah.
There's a problem somewhere that has to be addressed.
It
And
doesn't hurt to have a backup plan too, a kind of in case of emergency break glass. So part of the issue that I had with real estate was, like I mentioned, that was all I ever did. So there was literally nothing past that. If I'm out of real estate, what do I do? And I think that comes from the entrepreneurs, again, taking that lesson, the burn the ships mentality, where the army goes to the island and the general commands them to burn their ships so that they're going to fight like hell. Because if the ships are there, there's a retreat option, and they're not going to fight as hard, right? That's a thought with it. And I don't think there's anything wrong with having a backup plan. Hey, if this doesn't work out, this is what I could do instead. And nowadays that's helped me, because with coaching, I don't have it as much as of my persona. Like, yeah, I work a lot of hours. I've been doing this for years. But if something's happened, I've made a lot of connections through almost 1,000 podcast episodes and all these joint ventures, everything else, that I could find something else that I enjoy doing. To pay the bills, and something that I would like doing, as opposed to, I think sometimes entrepreneurs think, oh my God, if the business closes, I'm going to have to go work at Walmart and be a greeter. No offense to Walmart greeters, but they have a very fatalistic and doom and gloom mentality. You have to look at the assets that you've built up. Even if the numbers aren't working, you've probably made a ton of connections, and you've also gained an invaluable amount of knowledge that you can apply in the future.
listen, Mark, you're describing my story, because when I finally decided to get out of business brokerage, I went off, and to your point, I got a job. Like, I went and I worked for the bank, and I was there for 4 years. And when I finally got myself out of that, it was coming to an end basically. I realized, hey, I can take everything I learned in that business brokerage business, and I can apply that knowledge in a new, different kind of way, and make a more successful business that isn't as, tied to the ups and downs of this deal making stuff that's going on. And here I am today.
Yeah.
It's been over 10 years doing this. Today's successful business that David has is built entirely on the ashes of that business brokerage time, which gave me all the gray hair I have. Like, it was crazy. Like, it's laying up at night, after finding out a deal was going to be delayed by 3 more weeks, thinking, oh my goodness, how am I going to get the money to pay my receptionist? Because I was counting on that deal closing to get the money to pay my bills and pay her. And just, like, keeps you up at night worrying about how you're going to fix these things. If you are starting a business, it's not uncommon to have to struggle with problems. But if you've been in business for a long time and you're always finding yourself in that space, like I was with brokerage, just because it was an up down kind of thing. Like, we had revenue growth year over year in that industry. The problem is that every year I ran a 7 to 9 month period of time with no deal closings.
Yeah.
And so there was just no regularity to the cash flow at all. And that's where all the stress was coming from. And at the end of the day, after hearing the submarine shop story, that's when I realized, what, there's something wrong with this business. And I obviously can't make it work right. And so that's when I decided to leave.
There's a term I heard recently. I think it's called chaos addiction. And I think that fits entrepreneurs perfectly, that we're used to putting out fires every day and dealing with all this stuff. When someone from the outside would look at us and be like, what the hell are you doing? And not saying we do it intentionally, but I think entrepreneurs maybe subconsciously create issues because they're addicted to that chaos.
Some do.
Yeah, same with
know that some do.
relationships. The person I mentioned to you earlier has a bad habit of choosing crazy women, and I think he has chaos addiction. If he had the nice girl next door that never gave him any issues or whatever, I think he would be bored silly.
Yeah, well, this is what it's like to do business with humans, right?
Exactly. Well, for now, till AI takes over. Yeah.
Mark, this has been a great conversation. I think that we've probably shared a lot of thoughts and ideas, maybe that will help some people, finely tune the things maybe that they're thinking about or going through. I know that there's all kinds of people that are experiencing, a little bit of downturn in things in the economy in different sectors. I keep seeing more and more stuff online about people having some trouble, and so that's why I wanted to have this conversation today to try to, put it out there that things aren't always great, and that ultimately there's a path forward for everyone. You, as a business owner, are not your business. You are two separate things. And Mark, if people are curious about learning more about coaching, where can they find you online?
Yeah, I mean, the best place, naturalborncoaches.com. That's the central hub. I also have a Facebook group, You're in it, Dave. Thank you. It's called the Coaching Jungle. We've got almost 30,000 coaches in there, but you don't have to be a coach. If you're interested in coaching, you service coaches, whatever. But that's at coachingjungle.com.
And I did mention that one of the ways you can keep on top of knowing early if you have a problem or not is to have some kind of budget or forecast in your business. If you're curious to learn about how you can learn how to make a cash flow forecast in your business that you can use to understand early as possible if something's going wrong, head over to bizplanschool.com. It's where I teach my cash flow forecasting program that lets you learn how to build a forecast and put it into a business plan for bankers, investors, or for yourself to make sure that a business that you're thinking about doing or an expansion of a business that you're contemplating actually makes sense at the end of the day. It is far easier and cheaper to let a business fail on paper before you actually invest your time and money in building it out. And so with that, I'll say thank you very much, Mark, for joining me today. And thanks for everybody who joined live. It's great to see so many people in here. Mark says, thanks for the real life discussion. Super valuable. Thank you, Mark. Good to see you in here today. And Victor says, thanks for the book recommendation, Mark. And I'll thank you,
problem.
Victor, for
one of my favorites.
Here today. There's all kinds of great stuff out there. And with that, hey, thanks, Mark. We'll see you soon.
Thanks, Dave.
So, how can you learn more about buying, selling, financing, and managing small and medium-sized businesses? Easy. Go over to my blog site, davidcbarnett.com, where you can learn more about me and how I work with my clients. You can learn more about my books and courses that I've prepared for you. You can find out how to subscribe to my email list, the YouTube playlists, and more. There's literally hundreds of hours of content there, all for free, and I'd love for you to be my guest. Special thanks go to Mark Willis at Lake Growth Financial, today's video sponsor. Mark helps people better manage their personal and business finances through the Bank on Yourself insurance strategy. This is something I've done personally and I've seen others use it successfully for years. Go to newbankingsolution.com to find all the interviews I've done with Mark and learn more about the advantages of these programs. While there, sign up for a free consultation to learn what this solution might look like for you.